Yeah. And I, one of the things that I think about, first of all, you work with leaders all day long. You interview leaders for your podcast as well. I'd love to hear maybe some key learnings that you've taken from individuals, maybe someone who caused you to think differently about something. Because again, I think, we can get ourselves in situations where we're in our own leadership echo chamber. I'm sitting here like banging my fist on the table about this is what I believe about leadership, but that doesn't mean I'm right about everything related to leadership either. And so I'd love to hear, lessons that you've learned from all of these people that you're in conversation with, or things that you've, that you've heard that have caused you to think differently about leadership.
Thinking differently about leadership. I think what I've noticed is the most successful leaders are the ones who take time out of the day-to-day and work on their business instead of in their business.
Yes.
And the more they spend working on the business,
the
more successful they become. The more that they wallow in the working in the business, they just have all kinds of challenges in trying to grow and hire and do all the things necessary. And they're not really paying as much attention to the employees who need their input, right? Because they're busy working in the business.
How do you help them transition? Because I totally, as a me, myself, and I owner of a business, I really can relate to, creating time for working on versus in. So how do you get people to make, because I think that's a hard transition sometimes for people to make. How do you help them make that type of a transition?
We talk a lot about it in our Vistage groups. In fact, I always say our Vistage Day is that one magic day where you get to work on our business instead of in our business.
Yeah. So joining a group such as Vistage is helpful.
And so when you work on your business one day a month, it makes all the other days that you work in the business much more effective and efficient. Yeah. And I think that's one of the key things that we do is we try to elevate them out of the weeds for a day to talk at a strategic level. And everything we talk about is confidential. So they'll bring all their challenges to the table and we help them make good decisions. We don't tell them what to do, but we give them insights. And so we have a method to do that. What I think, here's an explanation I like to share because I think it might answer your question. Yeah. If you're an entrepreneur starting a business, it's much like driving a manual transmission car, right? When you're in first gear, founder wears all the hats. The goal is to go get some customers and get some cash in the door, right? Maybe you have a partner, maybe you have somebody working with you, but it's just go, go, go. That's the go-go phase, right? And then you shift gears into second gear. That's when you start to hire some support because you got customers, you got cash coming in.
Right.
So you hire maybe an office manager, maybe a bookkeeper, right? And so you slowly start to add some staff. Maybe you hire a salesperson or two, right? And now suddenly you've got 4 or 5, 6 people working for you. But the owner in second gear is still out there making sales. And that's his focus, right? And what happens in second gear when you get towards the end of second gear is profits are pretty good, right? But you got 10 employees, maybe 12, maybe 15. If you're the leader and everybody's reporting to the leader,
right?
And if you're the leader and you're spending all your time out with the customers and not with your 10 or 12 or 15 employees, they're suffering.
Yeah.
And a manager can only really manage about 6 people effectively. So a team shouldn't be more than 6 to 8. Am I right?
Please say that again. Because I have companies that I work with where they have 50 direct reports and you can't
do that.
You can't do that.
That's not effective. And it's unfair to the employees on the team.
It is. It's unfair to everyone. Whoever's trying to lead that team and everyone on the team.
One of the worst is when you have a working manager, right?
Yes.
The worst of both worlds. You got to manage 5 other people. Oh, you have to do the same job they have and you have the same quota to meet that they have.
Yes, congratulations.
You get the worst of both worlds. You're going to suck at both of them.
Yeah.
So second gear is really kind of nice. The owner is, they got cash, they got profits, but the business is growing and you got, 12, 15 employees. And next thing you know is you have to push in the clutch and shift into third gear. Third gear, and a lot of leaders or owners don't want to shift into third gear because profits go down. Third gear is when you start to bring in either promote or hire professional managers to start to oversee the departments. You have a VP of operations, you have a VP of finance, you have a VP of sales, right? Maybe a VP of administration. And so your org chart is starting to build out with a leadership team.
Yeah.
That's when you're in third gear. Guess what? The owner is still out there selling, still the face of the company. And the leadership team is now responsible for managing their departments. And if the leader is not paying attention, those departments become silos, and then you have the silo effect, right?
Oh, we got to talk about that. I hear that word every day. I'm not kidding you. Every day I hear that word, but keep going. We'll come back to that.
So, second and third gear, the owner is still putting in 70 hours a week, 80 hours a week, right?
And tired.
And they're getting exhausted.
Yeah.
And third gear, that's when you've invested money in the professional leaders because they cost you money. And so profits go down. But I can tell you, as you get towards the end of third gear, profits will come back exponentially greater than they were in second gear. And I went through that. Fourth gear, this is when you push in the clutch and the owner no longer works in the business. He's not out selling, right? He's the face of the company, but he's actually just working on the business, roughly 30 hours a week, right? And the leadership team has been developed to the point where they're running their departments. They're responsible for the P&Ls, right? Yes. And they're responsible for all the hiring and whatever. But the owner is now running a well-oiled machine, and he doesn't have to put in 70 hours a week, right? And so the trick is not only understanding what the four gears look like, because a lot of them don't.
No, I love the analogy that you're using. It's really helpful.
The other thing is you got to know when to push in the clutch. Because if you've ever driven a manual transmission vehicle, if you push the clutch in too soon, what happens? You stall the engine, right?
Yeah.
And if
I was really good at that.
If you push the clutch in too late, the tachometer is already in the red zone. That means somebody's burnt out. And guess who it is? It's the owner and the founder.
Oh, yeah.
And they get stuck in second gear because that's when the profits are the highest that they've seen since they started the business. And they don't think about, well, I got 15 employees and they just got to do their work. And he doesn't do anything to really lead them, right? Or he doesn't even have a strategic vision of where he wants to take the company. Just keep
growing. Keep growing.
Keep growing and put
More
out
customers.
brush fires every day.
Yeah.
And that's the definition of their day-to-day operation, right?
Yeah.
And so I share that story with a lot of entrepreneurs who, when I'm done, they look at me like, I've never heard it that way, and I never thought of it that way.
I love it.
And I'm in second gear. I don't want to be in here anymore. I don't want to be in second gear anymore.
Well, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking how many quit in second gear? How many just say, I can't do this anymore. I got to get out of this, or this isn't, or even first gear, I feel like, and they don't get to the point where
they might sell the company in second gear. But here's the problem with if you sell it then, a buyer is going to look at how involved is the owner, because if the owner leaves, is
it all going to fall apart?
It all falls apart. And then they're going to look at the leadership team. Are the leaders going to stick around?
Yeah.
Well, you don't have a leadership team in second gear. It's all the owner, right?
Right.
So you don't really have much of an enterprise value that you can sell. You get the fourth gear, your enterprise value goes significantly greater because the owner can step out and it won't impact the business's ability to continue to thrive, right? Not just survive, but thrive. And the buyer wants the owner, like, hey, you can go off into the sunset, here's your money. And the leadership team, we want them to stick around because they've been developed and they're doing a really good job. And so,
and you'll have that consistency and stability.
That due diligence is just another word for finding a way to beat you up for a lower price. And in second gear, you're not going to get much money. You're just not.
No.
Fourth gear is overdrive, and that's where the maximum enterprise value really comes to play. And I was very lucky. I got into fourth gear and I made it all through that. I remember hiring my VPs in third gear. I'm like, I can't even afford these people, but I know we're going to continue to grow. And sure enough, and it all worked out. And then I read this article from Vistage after I did it, and he described these 4 growth rates. I'm like, holy cow, I went through all 4 of them.
Yeah.
And I didn't know somebody actually articulated it in an article.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting too is I think about valuation as I'm listening to you talk, and I think about how many owners are putting so much of what they deem as the value of the business based on their own blood, sweat, and tears that they've put into it. And from the buyer's perspective, they're not valuing
That's detrimental to the value of the business.
Yeah, they're not valuing it that way. So then you know how often this happens where just worlds apart in terms of valuation. And it's not necessarily because someone's just trying to get the best price. It's just because they're not looking at your business the way you look at it from, starting
it's two
from
different frames of reference.
All of that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
When I hear a business owner say, well, I got to be the first one in at 6 a.m. and I got to be the last one out the door at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock at night because I got to set an example for my employees. Oh my gosh, that's head trash. Total
head trash. Ooh, I'm going to use that term. I'm stealing it.
That's total head trash.
Yeah. Why is that head trash? Tell us.
Because they think that they have to be in charge of everything. They think that they are the ones that drive the company. And if they're not there, the company will fall apart.
And that success is working 12, 15, 16 hours a day.
And that's how they define their
maybe it
their
is, maybe
self-worth.
It isn't. I don't know. Yeah.
If that's how they define their self-worth, they're looking at the wrong thing, right? A really successful company with a really good leader can pass the 90-day test. And the 90-day test is this. That leader can go on vacation for 90 days with leaving his cell phone and laptop at home, never checking in. And when he comes back, the business is still thriving. That's
I love
that's a 90-day test.
Okay, I want every leader that's listening to this right now to just pause for a minute and think about if you disconnected for 90 days, what would happen? Yeah. Ooh, I like that. Okay, real quick, we got to revisit Silas. We have to, because it is such a pain point for so many people. So I would love to hear your perspective on how they get started and how you break them down.
Well, part of it is a culture problem.
Yeah.
A lot of finger pointing.
Yes.
And
a lot of ego.
and you typically nothing gets done about it. And you're not bringing people together in the different silos to help them understand what the other people do and the other. One of the things I did in my company, this is how I addressed it. We were growing so fast that, in fact, my banker told me to slow down. We were outpacing the maximum sustainable growth rate for a distribution company, which was 20 to 25% a year. We were growing like 30, 40%. He told me to slow down. Yeah, it was. But he told me to slow down. And I'm like, it's not the answer I wanted.
Yeah.
I'm here to borrow more money because I'm running out of cash. And he goes, you're growing too
fast. Credit cards aren't going to cut it this time around.
And so from that point forward, my strategic intentional growth rate was an average of 23% a year. We were right in that zone. And we were able not only to grow as fast as we could without outstripping our cash flow, I was able to pay down the line of credit I already had, which led to the maximum enterprise value when I sold my company. So it was really good, but still growing 23% a year. We were just encountering all kinds of growing pains and growth problems. So I started this thing called the Performance Improvement Team.
Okay.
And so I brought people from every department in, right? I had somebody in my sales team. I had my VP of administration. I had my VP of operations. I had a regional operations manager over all my offices. And then I had the managers of each branch, right? And so the team, I don't know, maybe there was 10 people on it. And I remember the first time, our first meeting, it was my COO, his name was Jim. I said, Jim, we got to do something here because we're growing so fast. There's problems that are happening. We don't even know what they are. And how can we solve a problem we don't know about?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure we have the answers for some of these, right? So I said, let's get a team together. Let's do a performance improvement team. I don't even know where I came up with the idea. So I got everybody together. So the first meeting, finger pointing.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Well, they don't do this and they don't do this. And so hold on. First of all, Jim and I don't know everything, all the problems that you guys are encountering, but you do.
Yeah.
Right? And the second thing is, I don't think that we even have the solutions. I think you do. So here's what I'd like you to do. We don't have problems. We have opportunities for improvement, OFIs. I'd like you all to come to the next meeting with 3 opportunities for improvement. What are your ideas? And so the next meeting, the finger pointing sort of wound down. Right? Because as they're bringing these issues, it was really identifying where some things were falling through the cracks in the different departments. And hey, let's talk about how that impacts the different departments, right? Just like filling out a delivery form. If you don't fill it out completely and you give it to the billing person, they have to make phone calls to the hospital to get the missing information. You're tying up the time. And they go, well, they already know all that. No, they don't. So So we went through this bring 3 opportunities for improvement. And what I did was I wrote them all down. I said, okay, going to go around the table. What are your thoughts on why this is happening? And so people would give us the information on.
So almost like a root cause.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. Was what's the root cause? So once we got that out, it's okay. What are your thoughts? And I would go around the table because I wasn't going to let anybody not speak. Because you know what happens if you don't make everybody speak. Somebody comes up to you at the end of the meeting and says, I was going to say this, but I didn't feel comfortable doing it. No, it's too late to talk now, right? So I would go around the table. Everybody had to speak. What's your thought on solving this problem? And you'd get different thoughts, but usually somebody would nail it. And everybody would look and go, wow, never thought of that, but that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so it was never the same person, but somebody would come up with a solution that really made total sense. So, okay, that's what we're going to do. That's how we're going to solve a problem. Who's going to be the foreman? Who's responsible for that?
Yeah.
We would assign a foreman to actually do something. And we had this meeting every 6 weeks. So it wasn't monthly. It was too
I like
quick.
That.
But every 6 weeks, and we would come back and we would review the opportunities for improvement, ask the foreman for an update, and nobody wanted to be embarrassed by saying, I didn't do anything.
Oh, I love the accountability there.
Yeah. And so they came up with the ideas. So I got their buy-in. Jim and I didn't have to solve the problem. They did. I just had to facilitate the discussion.
Yeah.
And the foreman would accept the responsibility and he would give us an update, or she. And we started knocking these things off.
Nice.
But what we ended up with, we started with just a handful, right? And about 6 months into this, we had 124 OFIs.
Wow.
These are opportunities for improvement. And we just started checking them all off, doing this whole discussion, right? And the meeting took most of the morning. I think we started at 9.
Yeah.
Had donuts and coffee for them.
Yeah.
And we would be done before.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'd be done before lunchtime. But the key was we ended up with, I want to say it was more like 132. I think that was the number. That was the biggest number we ever got to. But we kept knocking them out and we really started to get good at it. And so probably 6 months later, we were down to 24. And it was like, okay, we've solved all these problems. We don't have as many problems as we used to have.
Huh. How about that? Funny how that works.
And so we said, well, why don't we start doing some social events? Who wants to be the foreman of that?
I love it.
And it brought people together.
Yeah.
And it helped us navigate the fast-growing pains that we were experiencing. And so by being able to intentionally navigate the growing pains in a way that they came up with, hey, here's a way we could do better, and here's our solution. I'll take ownership.
Yeah.
Right. And I always made sure that no one individual was overloaded.
Taking it all.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they have their day-to-day activities that they had to do. So this is usually something like 1 or 2 projects they had to do on top of their day-to-day. But because they were focused and everybody knew what everybody else was working on, and they really got a feel for how difficult the different departments' roles were and how they could impact positively to make their jobs easier, the silo walls came down.
Wow. I love that you created that space for people because, yes, you were giving them an opportunity to really just interact with each other when maybe these were functions that didn't interact as much unless they were angry with each other and finger pointing, right? But you gave them that space to learn about each other, to see each other maybe in a different light. Now, I'm so curious to know, did you ever have people that would take ownership over projects that weren't necessarily their functional area? Because I could see, I could see some hesitation if, let's say, I was in charge of supply chain and you were in charge of finance, and it was a supply chain project, but you said, I'll take ownership over that. That maybe that causes me to be a little twitchy in my silo. I'm like, what are you doing with supply chain? So I'm just curious how that ended up. Or is it more cross-functional opportunities? It didn't just
usually the foreman was in that area in which the issue could be resolved.
Okay.
And it gave the ownership to them. If it was something that wasn't really department specific, and I couldn't assign it to somebody who wants to volunteer.
Yeah.
People like to volunteer.
Yeah.
They were good about that. Sometimes it was a cross-functional thing where, hey, I need you and you, the two of you, to team up and work on this together. Yeah. And that happened every so often as well. But I don't think I had anybody that was twitchy. I don't think I put anybody in a position where they got twitchy.
Yeah. No, but I love that concept. And thank you for sharing that example, because I think that's really relevant. Again, I hear it all the time. I see it all the time. And there's so much unnecessary frustration. And I think you and I both, it seems like, are motivated by, let's just minimize this frustration. It doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah. I think getting out on the table, what frustrates you about this other department here?
Yeah.
And what's frustrating that department about what's going on in your department? And where's that frustration coming from? Because now we're not pointing fingers at people. We're talking about situations or events.
Yeah.
And always address the events, not the person.
Yeah. And a lot of times I think people they mix those two up.
Yeah.
They assign it to the person. And a lot of times it's like, hey, I'm just following the process and procedure that I'm supposed to be following in my department. It's not like I'm just trying to be difficult or a blocker. I'm doing this because I'm following a quality regulation that the government put out that I have to follow, and I have to make sure you follow it too. I'm not just trying to ruin your day, So I think a lot of times people will assign it to the person and not recognize it's actually sometimes more of just a function of the role or a business process that maybe isn't working.
Systems and processes.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So much can be relieved by having the proper systems and processes in place. And if situations arise where things aren't going well, look at the system or the process as opposed to the person.
Yes.
Because if you don't fix the system or process and that person leaves and you hire a new person, nothing's changed. Right?
No, and those are the things that make people crazy. I'll go in sometimes and do leadership training, and the participants will say, this is nice, but like, we can't get our printers to work here. That's a problem. Yeah, I get it. Like, you want us to lead, but like, I can't even get the printer to work here. And I'm like, I hear you. I understand that is, it's like the death by 1,000 paper cuts that you're experiencing all day long. And so I understand that you want that fixed, It's an important part of your process of what you go through. All right. So I have to round this conversation out. And I know this could probably be its own podcast episode in and of itself. But I have to ask you, so much leadership advice that you give and can give and you've heard. But what would you say is maybe the best or worst leadership advice you've ever received?
Oh.
Or that you want to talk about, don't do this. If you want to give one piece of advice to our leaders that are listening, we can frame it that way too.
Really, micromanagement is it's the bane of our business world.
It is. It is.
I have a pet peeve about it.
Me too.
And I just think it's the worst, right? You cannot motivate somebody by micromanaging them. Mm-mm. They don't grow when they're micromanaged, right? I think being a micromanager or really says a lot about the manager's insecurity or inefficiencies or whatever head trash they have in their head from growing up. Something happened in their childhood. I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of the things that we live with ourselves came from our childhood.
Oh, yes. Yes. Yeah.
And, the whole the gotcha thing you mentioned before, right? That's just so inappropriate. The whole, but what took you so long? Those are the kinds of things that, you can't do that because you're robbing the employee of growing, developing. You're demotivating them. You're disengaging them. Yes. And they're going to leave because they leave bad managers. And micromanagers are bad managers.
They are. End of story. And
a lot of people don't even understand. I've met some people that they say they're going to coach you, but they don't understand the difference between coaching and micromanaging. They think micromanaging is coaching.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I just met a lady just 6 months ago. That was her problem. And I'm like, who can stand working with you?
Yeah.
I'm coaching. No, you're not.
I am such a good coach. I tell people what to do all day long.
Exactly.
And exactly how to do it. And why didn't you do it this way? I give so much coaching. That is not coaching.
You don't tell a good coach doesn't tell you what to do. They ask you what you're going to do.
Yeah.
And so asking questions, communication and transparency are two things that if it's missing or lacking, you got some serious problems, right?
Yeah.
When you really think about it, communication really is the glue that holds everything together.
Yes.
And transparency, you've got to be able to give everybody a broad picture of what the bigger picture of what the company, why does it exist? What are we aiming for, right?
Where are we driving to?
And I've met leaders that are managers who say, they don't need to know that. They just got to do what I tell them to do. Oh, really? You think that's good management or good leadership? Good luck to you, buddy.
Yeah. And if you don't trust your people
trust
to share information, then we have a different situation going on, right?
If you don't trust them, why did you hire them?
Yeah.
And there's a company I won't mention in Batesville, Indiana, that they have 100% turnover.
Oh my.
And every single time it's like, that was a bad hire. Meanwhile, they have a toxic culture and they micromanage everything. Oh, that was a bad hire.
I mean,
everybody they fire or everybody who leaves.
How many bad hires does it take before you think about, is it just a bad hire? Also, at a minimum, your hiring practices are bad. It sounds like, if that's really the case, but we know. We always, a former boss that I used to joke around. I can't remember how many times was Elizabeth Taylor married. It was like 7 times, or
I think it was 7,
and
Richard Burton twice.
Yeah,
to him twice actually.
Not condemning people who've been married multiple times, but we were just kind of giggling about it one day because it's like, at what marriage point? Like, how many do you say? Like, maybe it's
I'm
not
the problem.
Maybe it's not the other person. Maybe I have something to do with this too. And I think about that from a leadership context because I hear that all the time, Kevin. Oh, that was a bad hire. They're just not what we thought they were going to be, or they're this, they're that, and it's really sad to me because we are impacting people's life, and not just their life, but their family's life too.
So that type of leadership, they're not recruiting properly. They're not hiring and selecting properly. They probably have a really terrible selection process, and onboarding, right?
Onboarding.
Onboarding is the weakest link in the chain of events from hire to retire, right? Yes. That's missing in so many businesses.
I agree.
They think that onboarding is, we'll give them a week's worth of training. Come in, we'll do a week's worth of product training.
Read the handbook.
Read it. Here's your handbook. Read it, and here's your product training. And at the end of that week, you're done, right? Go out, make sales, or go out and do the job, and you don't get much more than that.
No.
Onboarding is, I think, it's a minimum of 90 days, and it's sort of ongoing and never ending when you think about it. Because ongoing training after the initial onboarding period, I really do think it's 90 days. I had a 90-day onboarding program because I recognized how weak link that was.
Oh yeah.
And so, and most of the hires that I made initially, I was doing the training, right? But I didn't have that kind of time. So what I did was I took everything that we wanted them to know, spread it out over a 90-day period, and every single week there were certain goals of training had to be met.
Yeah.
Each day there was certain topics that had to be met, and I would assign those to different people in my company to actually do the training segment. So nobody really had a full day of training a new employee. They would have maybe 1 hour.
Right. Because I do think the time piece is what holds a lot of people back.
Because they don't have a well-organized, well-thought-out onboarding process.
Right. It's just like, oh, we forgot to order their computer and they're here. Oh, your phone's coming next week. Oh, yeah.
So that was one of the things that I intentionally did something good about, because it really is a weak link in most businesses.
It is. Yeah. And I think that's a great nugget from our conversation too, for a business. If you're a leader or a business owner, if you want to think about one area of improvement in your business, I can almost guarantee you your onboarding could get better. Probably a weak spot, because pretty much every company I've worked for and with, it is. And I think a lot of times we think when that employee walks in the door, we're done.
Yeah.
You're just starting. You're not done when they walk in the door.
That's just the beginning.
You're just starting.
You got to have a formal onboarding training program. It's not gonna just be 1 week or a couple days.
Yeah.
90 days is I think, more of a good number.
Yeah.
But the real bottom line is ongoing training, right? You can never undertrain your employees. You can never overtrain
Oh,
your employees.
yeah.
You can only undertrain them.
Absolutely.
And so training has to be ongoing and never ending.
Yeah.
In some ways, shape, or form,
Yeah.
is you want to grow your people so that they can get better at the role that they're in and move up when those opportunities come
Absolutely.
forward.
Yeah.
If you don't do that, they aren't going to see that
No.
progress or progression of their career, and they're going to be, I'm stagnant. Why should I stay?
Yeah.
Why should I stay? There's plenty of jobs out there.
Yeah.
All I have to do is wait for a handful of recruiters to come and poach me.
And they're
and
chomping
that's
at the
what
bit.
they're doing.
Yes.
So it's not even like they have to go look hard for a job. They're going to be recruited.
Absolutely.
I've seen some really good employees get poached that left a real hole in the organizations.
I know. And it's hard. And I feel for companies because I know they're struggling. I know they don't want to lose these people.
Yeah.
But a lot of times they don't even tell these people how good they are and how valued they are. And
they have to feel valued.
Yeah.
And they have to feel like they're being heard.
Yeah.
Right. Which is what my performance improvement team did. They were heard.
Yeah.
And they were helping solve the problems.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
And they got to really enjoy that performance improvement team because they were solving problems and they were making progress and they were making a significant impact on us doing a better job.
Yes.
And our customer ratings were really pretty high as a result.
And they knew they impacted that. I mean, everybody wants to be a part of something bigger than themselves.
Exactly.
Everyone wants to know that they're making a positive impact. I mean, I don't know anyone that comes into work thinking like, I just hope that I'm like a cog in the wheel today. I mean, they may seem like they act that way, but truly, if you look at anything related to motivation theory, they want to be a part of solving big problems and making a difference. And so give them the opportunity to do it. It's not that hard.
No, exactly. And it goes back to the original concept of creating a strategic plan, long-term 3 to 5 to 10-year plan.
Yeah.
Because you've got to create the structure or the organizational chart that supports that, right? Structure follows strategy.
Yes.
And then you've got to make sure that everybody who's in the roles that you have and the structure that support the strategy,
absolutely,
they know what the role is. Mm-hmm. They understand what how they impact the bigger picture.
Yes.
They got to know all that. And so many businesses that I see, there's a disconnect.
I know. And I do feel like companies spend a lot of time, if they do focus on strategy at all, they spend so much time on that they don't spend the time on the structure or making sure people are aligned. And you can have the best strategy in the world, but as we talked about, if you have a terrible culture, or if you don't have the people to execute the strategy,
execution is the weakest link in the whole thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Then it doesn't matter how great the strategy was. It's going to look really pretty on that PowerPoint slide, but that's all it's going to be is a PowerPoint slide.
Exactly.
I wish.
And all of this is fixable. That's the thing, right? I'm a big believer that everything is fixable, and it's actually easier to fix than people imagine.
It really is. But I think a lot of it does come down to what you're truly prioritizing at the end of the day and what you're tolerating,
right?
Which is important too. But this has been very therapeutic, Kevin. I joke around that it's been a good venting session for me, but I do think we've touched on things that are not just frustrating for us. I really feel like we've covered topics that are frustrating for people who are working at all levels, regardless of whether they're an individual contributor, in the C-suite, somewhere in between. I think we've really touched on a lot of frustrations for people. And so I hope that people will walk away from this conversation recognizing you can fix it and it doesn't have to be so frustrating.
It's all fixable.
Yeah.
It's all fixable.
Amazing. What have we left on the table today? Anything else we need to cover here, Kevin?
Oh, I appreciate the conversation because we see the world the same way in terms of what's going on out there and the frustration and things that we've witnessed and what we try to impact ourselves, right? So I really love working with other CEOs and entrepreneurs, helping them get the ship turned around and getting it structured right and getting it organized.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of growth in the leaders that I work with. And so
And
I know
that's
it's making
fulfilling.
it. Yeah. For me, that's my why.
Yeah.
Right. That's how I get fulfilled.
Yeah.
That's why I get out of bed every day.
Same. Well, thank you. Thank you for being here. Are you game for a lightning round real quick? 60 seconds.
Sure.
Why not, right? Okay. Let me pull up my timer here. It's 60 seconds to answer as many open-ended questions about you as you can. So I'll start my timer now. What season best fits your personality?
Fall.
Okay. What's your most used emoji in text?
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up. All right. What book, song, movie, or podcast has had the greatest impact on your life?
2 books. When I Say No, I Feel Guilty by Dr. Manuel Smith, which is all about assertiveness training. And the second one was Marketing Warfare by Jack Trout and Al Reese. Changed my perspective on marketing and sales to the point where I would credit that book for my success in sales, probably 80%.
That's amazing. What's something about you that surprises people when they first hear it?
Gosh, that I've been an entrepreneur for so long.
Yeah. Fill in the blank. I spend too much money on. Here's my timer, but you can finish that one out.
I spent too much money
on what?
Maybe memberships.
Okay. Oh, me too. Yeah, that one hits close to home. Well, thank you again so much for being here. There's so much wisdom. My gosh, people just got a free coaching session and then some free leadership training, free coaching session today. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
This was a joy.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
It's been a pleasure.
Enjoyed it as well. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Until next time, shine bright, everyone.